I never imagined I'd be the kind of guy who second-guessed his wife. Laura and I had been married for 8 years, and up until now, I thought we had a strong relationship. We weren't the type of couple that argued over small things or let life stress keep us from enjoying time together. Sure, we had our rough patches like anyone else, but we always managed to get through them, at least, that's what I told myself. It started with little things I could easily dismiss if I wanted to. Laura's phone began buzzing more frequently in the evenings, and she'd glance at it quickly before flipping it over, the screen facing down on the table. At first, I didn't think much of it. We both had busy lives. She worked in event planning, where every other message was some kind of emergency, and I had my own share of stress from work. But after a while, it got harder to ignore. It wasn't just the messages. She seemed distant, distracted. I'd be talking to her about my day, and while she'd nod along, I could tell her mind was elsewhere. Then came the late nights, more frequent than usual, with vague reasons like work events or impromptu meetings with clients. Even then, I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband who starts snooping just because his wife's schedule got busier. I trusted her. But trust, as I was slowly learning, is a fragile thing. One night, as I sat at the kitchen table going through some emails, Laura came in. She'd been out again, attending some work event, or at least that's what she said. She didn't look disheveled exactly, but something was different. Her face was a little flushed, her hair slightly tousled like she had hurried home. I tried to shake off the thoughts creeping into my mind as she set down her purse and poured herself a glass of wine. "How was the event?" I asked casually, watching her from the corner of my eye. "It was fine," she replied, glancing at her phone before tucking it into her pocket. "Same old stuff, talking to clients, trying to make a good impression. Exhausting, really." I nodded, though the unease in my chest was hard to ignore. She wasn't acting all that different, but something just didn't feel right. I glanced at the clock. It was 10:30 p.m. She had told me earlier she'd be back by 9. I tried to brush it off. The next day, I got home early from work. I'd had a meeting with Amanda, my boss, and it had wrapped up quicker than I expected. Amanda wasn't someone you messed around with. She ran the office with an iron grip and commanded respect. I admired her, but I'd be lying if I said she didn't intimidate me at times. She had this sharp way of looking at you, like she could see all your flaws and wouldn't hesitate to use them against you if needed. Anyway, I thought I'd take advantage of the early afternoon and surprise Laura. Maybe we could go out for dinner, spend some quality time together. Lately, she had been so caught up with work that we hadn't had much time for each other. But when I walked into the house, it was empty. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and there was no note or text letting me know she'd be out. I checked my phone, nothing. It felt strange because she usually let me know if she had to leave for something. I wandered around the house, trying to keep myself busy, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. Where was she? A couple of hours passed before I finally heard her car pull into the driveway. I stayed in the living room, pretending to watch TV, though my thoughts were entirely focused on the front door. Laura walked in, looking a bit surprised to see me. "Oh, you're home earlier than I expected." "Yeah," I replied, keeping my tone light. "The meeting wrapped up quicker than I thought." "Where'd you go?" She hesitated for just the briefest moment before flashing a smile. "I had to run out for a last-minute meeting with a client. Nothing too thrilling." That unsettling feeling twisted in my gut again. Another client meeting at almost 7 p.m. I wanted to push her on it, to ask what was really going on. But what could I say? That I didn't trust her? That I thought she was lying? Instead, I just nodded along. "Right. Seems like a busy day for both of us." She smiled, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, but even with that small gesture, I could feel the distance between us. She was here physically, sure, but her mind was somewhere far off. Later that night, as we got ready for bed, the feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave me. She was in the bathroom, brushing her teeth, her phone resting on the nightstand. I glanced at it, feeling my pulse quicken. Don't be that guy, I told myself. Don't go down that road. But I couldn't help it. My hand reached for the phone, and before I could think twice, I swiped it open. Most of the messages were what I expected, texts from work colleagues, a few from friends. But then, one conversation made my stomach sink. It was with Amanda, my boss. At first glance, it seemed like typical work talk, discussing projects and deadlines, but as I scrolled further, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Amanda, looking forward to tomorrow. Can't stop thinking about last night. Laura, me neither. Wish we didn't have to be so secretive. My breath hitched. Secretive about what? My hand started shaking as I scrolled back, desperately searching for context, anything that would make sense of this. But the more I read, the worse it got. Amanda, maybe we can slip away during lunch. Meet me at the usual spot. Laura, definitely. Same time as always. My chest tightened. I felt like I might be sick. The usual spot. Same time as always. This wasn't a work-related conversation. I slammed the phone shut, my heart racing so fast it felt like it might burst out of my chest. What the hell was going on? Laura came out of the bathroom, flashing a smile as she climbed into bed. Everything all right? I swallowed hard, trying to act casual. Yeah, all good. But nothing felt good anymore. For the next few days, those texts haunted me. I replayed them in my mind over and over, trying to make sense of it all, trying to convince myself that maybe I'd misunderstood something. But the more I thought about it, the clearer things became. The late nights, the distant attitude, the sneaky texts, it all started to add up. Something was happening, something I wasn't a part of, and now I couldn't ignore it any longer. The following week, I noticed more shifts in Laura's schedule. She was going out more often, sometimes for work, other times saying she was meeting friends. But I knew she barely saw her friends once or twice a month, and this new routine didn't sit right with me. I started checking her phone more frequently, but it was like she'd been wiping away the more damning messages. The ones from Amanda were shorter now, more professional, as if she was trying to hide something. I needed to know the truth, and I wasn't going to stop until I figured out exactly what was going on. The days that followed blurred together, a whirlwind of suspicion, anxiety, and anger that I couldn't seem to escape. I tried to keep up the appearance that everything was normal, but inside, I felt like I was losing my grip. Every time I looked at Laura, those texts echoed in my mind. Can't stop thinking about last night. Wish we didn't have to be so careful. Amanda's name kept repeating in my head, like some cruel chant. My wife and my boss, it sounded too ridiculous to be true, but I couldn't deny what I'd seen. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that I was reading too much into things, but the feeling that something was horribly wrong refused to go away. I started watching Laura more closely, paying attention to her every move, listening for anything unusual in the way she spoke, and noticing all the small things that seemed off. It wasn't just the texts. It was everything. She had been coming home later and later, always with some excuse about work emergencies or client dinners. Her phone was constantly in her hand, and she had become more secretive with it, locking it whenever I was around. There were nights she'd leave it in another room, and I could hear it buzzing non-stop, each vibration sending a jolt of anxiety through me. She was slipping away, emotionally, physically. It felt like I was living with someone I barely knew. One night, after another one of her late returns, I finally gave in. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it crossed a line, but I couldn't help myself. She had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone resting beside her, and for the first time in days, it wasn't locked. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for it, hands trembling. I unlocked it, scrolling through her messages, desperate for some kind of explanation, something to prove that I was wrong, that this was all just in my head. But instead, I found more of the same. Amanda again. The texts were shorter now, more cautious, but the undertone was still there. The flirtation. The secrecy. They were talking like they shared some private world. Amanda, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. We'll figure it out, okay? Laura, definitely. Just tell me when you're free. Figure what out? My stomach twisted with every word. I scrolled further, my pulse racing as I uncovered more. Some of the older messages were deleted, but not all of them. I found one from a couple of weeks ago that stopped me dead in my tracks. Laura, I'm scared. He's starting to get suspicious. Amanda, relax. We'll take care of it. We've been careful. My heart pounded in my ears. Suspicious? Take care of what? What were they talking about? I felt like I couldn't breathe. I dropped the phone back onto the couch, my mind spiraling. What were they hiding? The next day, I was useless at work. I couldn't focus on anything. My eyes kept drifting toward Amanda's office, wondering if she had any idea that I'd seen the messages. Every time she passed by, I felt this strange, uncomfortable tension between us, like she knew I was onto something. She seemed more distant than usual, though maybe it was just my imagination. Still, I couldn't ignore the way she smiled whenever she caught me looking at her, a cold, knowing smile. During lunch, she casually walked over to my desk, her expression completely unreadable. "Nick, got a minute?" she asked, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yeah, sure. What's up?" "Just need to have a quick chat," she said, wearing that same unsettling smile. "Come by my office." My palms were sweating as I followed her, trying my best to act normal. My mind raced, scrambling to figure out how to play this. I didn't have solid proof, just the cryptic texts I'd seen, and there was no way I could accuse my boss of having an affair with my wife without risking my job or, worse, setting off something bigger. Christine sat behind her desk, folding her hands neatly as she studied me. "So, how are things going? You've seemed a bit off lately." My stomach twisted. Did she know? Was she testing me? "Just feeling stressed, I guess," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Work's been pretty overwhelming lately." She nodded, her eyes lingering on me a little too long, like she was trying to read something beneath the surface. "I can understand that. It's important to take care of yourself. Don't let the pressure get to you." There was something in her voice, something a little too casual, too friendly. It felt like I was under a microscope, like every word and move I made was being dissected. "I'll be fine," I said quickly, eager to escape the room. "Just a lot on my plate this week." "Well, if you ever need to talk," Christine continued, her tone softening just a bit, "you know my door's always open." I forced a smile and nodded before making a quick exit. As I left her office, my mind was racing in all directions. What was her game? Was she genuinely concerned, or was there something more behind that offer? Did she suspect I was starting to piece things together about her and Laura? The whole thing made my stomach churn. Over the next few days, my paranoia only grew worse. Every time Laura stepped out of the house, I found myself questioning where she was really going. Each time she smiled at her phone or laughed at a message, that knot in my gut tightened. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, I started following her. I knew it wasn't right. I knew it was a slippery slope, unhealthy even, but I couldn't stop. The more secretive she became, the more desperate I was to catch her in the act, to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. One evening, she mentioned she had a client dinner and wouldn't be home until late. After she left, I grabbed my keys and followed her, keeping a safe distance behind. My heart pounded in my chest the whole time, adrenaline surging through me as I tried to stay far enough back so she wouldn't notice. But she didn't drive to a restaurant. Instead, she headed out to a small, unfamiliar neighborhood on the edge of town and pulled into the parking lot of a hotel. I watched from a distance as she got out of the car, glanced around for a moment, and then walked inside. My stomach turned. A hotel. She wasn't even trying to cover it up anymore. I parked across the street, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, watching the entrance like I was waiting for some sort of confirmation. She hadn't told me a thing about this place, not even a lame excuse. This wasn't some simple client dinner. This was something much worse. I sat in the car for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, trying to figure out what my next move was. I had to know. I couldn't just sit there, watching from afar like some helpless fool. I got out of the car and crossed the street toward the hotel, my heart thudding in my ears. The lobby was quiet when I stepped in, just a bored-looking receptionist behind the desk, not paying me any mind. I walked past her and headed for the elevator, my hands trembling. I didn't even know what room she was in. Hell, I didn't even know if I really wanted to find her. But my feet kept moving on their own, guiding me down the hallway as I searched for any sign of her. And then I saw her. Standing at the end of the hallway, talking to someone. A woman. Amanda. My breath caught in my throat as I quickly ducked behind the corner, watching them. What in the world was going on? They were talking quietly, too far for me to make out the words, but the way they were looking at each other, it was too close, too familiar. Amanda reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind Laura's ear, her touch soft and affectionate. My stomach churned. Without saying another word, they both disappeared into one of the hotel rooms, the door clicking shut behind them. I stood there, completely frozen, my mind spinning. Amanda, my boss, and Laura, my wife. This wasn't just an affair. It was so much worse. I had seen more than enough, but still, the weight of the moment crushed me. I needed to confront them, both of them, but it felt like my world had come crashing down in one swift blow. I couldn't breathe. Standing there in the dimly lit hallway, my heart pounded so loudly I could hear the rush of blood in my ears. Laura and Amanda. My wife and my boss. Together. It felt like my brain had shut down, like a vital part of me had been ripped out and replaced with pure disbelief. I stood there, staring at the door they had slipped behind, for what felt like hours. My thoughts scrambled, racing to catch up. How could this be happening? How could this have been going on right under my nose without me even noticing? My wife. My boss. Together. I didn't know what to do. Should I burst into that room and confront them or just turn around and walk away? Every muscle in my body was tense, torn between wanting to face the truth and dreading what I might find behind that door. But I couldn't walk away. I had to know. Taking a deep breath, my hands trembling, I moved toward the door. My fingers hovered over the handle for just a second before I pressed down and slowly pushed it open. The room was dim, the curtains drawn tight. For a brief moment, I wondered if I had the wrong room, if maybe this was all some horrible misunderstanding. But then I heard it, their voices. They were speaking in hushed, intimate tones, too low for me to catch the exact words, but the closeness was unmistakable. I stepped further inside, my heart hammering in my chest as I finally saw them. Laura was sitting on the edge of the bed, her back facing me. Amanda stood in front of her, one hand resting lightly on Laura's shoulder. Neither of them noticed me right away. They were too wrapped up in each other. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The air rushed from my lungs, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out. But I couldn't tear my eyes away. I stood there, completely frozen, watching my wife and my boss. It felt like I was trapped in some awful nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Laura said something in a soft voice, and Amanda laughed quietly, running her fingers gently through Laura's hair. The intimacy between them was undeniable. This wasn't just some fling. This was something far deeper, something I hadn't seen coming. I'm not sure what broke inside me, but suddenly, I was moving. My feet carried me forward before my brain could catch up, and my voice cut through the heavy silence like a knife. What the hell is going on? They both froze, turning toward me, wide-eyed. Laura's face went pale, fear flooding her eyes. Nick, Amanda, on the other hand, didn't look scared. She didn't even seem surprised. Instead, she gave me this slow, calculating smile that made my stomach twist. Well, Amanda said coolly, this is a little awkward. Awkward. That's what this was to her. My hands started to shake, rage building inside me so fast I thought I might explode. What the hell is this? I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. How long has this been happening? Laura stood up, her hands trembling as she reached out toward me. Nick, I can explain. Explain? I spat, pulling away from her. Explain what? That you've been screwing my boss behind my back. That you've been lying to me for months. What exactly are you going to explain? Laura's lip quivered, and tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. Not after this. The betrayal cut too deep. She had shattered everything we had, everything I thought I knew about our marriage. It had all been a lie. Amanda, on the other hand, looked completely unfazed. She crossed her arms over her chest, watching the scene unfold with this cold, detached look that made my skin crawl. I'm sorry, Laura whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Like this? I repeated bitterly, laughing under my breath. What exactly was the plan, Laura? How long has this been going on? She hesitated just a moment too long. 6 months, she finally muttered, barely above a whisper. 6 months. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal. 6 months of her sneaking around with Amanda, laughing at me behind my back while I trusted her completely. I turned to Amanda, the anger bubbling over. And you. This was you, wasn't it? You went after her, didn't you? Was this some kind of sick game to you? Amanda smiled again, that same cold, chilling smile that made my blood boil. Nick, let's not turn this into something bigger than it needs to be. Bigger than it needs to be? I shouted, my voice rising with each word. You've been sleeping with my wife, Amanda. You're my boss. How the hell is this not a big deal? She shrugged, completely unbothered. Laura and we care about each other. That's what matters. I stared at her, stunned, unable to believe the words coming out of her mouth. She was acting like this was all perfectly normal, like it was no big deal to sleep with her employee's wife and tear his life apart in the process. I turned back to Laura, my voice shaking with fury. And you? How could you do this to me? Why her? Tears streamed down Laura's face as she shook her head, unable to look at me. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never planned it. You didn't plan this? I scoffed, my hands trembling with anger. You've been lying to me for 6 months, sneaking around with her, and you're telling me this wasn't planned? She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But her apologies were worthless to me now. Just empty words, like everything else she had said. Amanda stepped forward, placing a hand on Laura's shoulder again, her expression softening as she looked at her. It's okay. We'll figure this out. I stared at them, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing in 100 directions. Figure this out? No. You both need to leave, I said, my voice low and threatening. Get out. Both of you. Laura looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Nick, please. I said get out. I snapped. I don't want to see either of you again. Amanda smiled that same cold, calculating smile that made my skin crawl. We'll give you some time to cool down, Nick. But this isn't over. She turned to Laura, giving a nod toward the door. Come on. Let's go. I stood there, watching as the two people I trusted most in the world walked out of my life together. The door clicked shut behind them, and the silence that followed was deafening. I collapsed onto the bed, my heart pounding, my mind spinning out of control. How had it come to this? How had my life unraveled so completely? I felt numb, like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff, staring down at the wreckage of everything I once believed in. My wife and my boss. Together. This wasn't just an affair. It was something deeper, something I still couldn't fully wrap my head around. But I was going to get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took. The house felt emptier than it had ever been once they left, Laura and Amanda, together. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving nothing but a suffocating silence behind. I just sat there, staring into the void, trying to process what had just happened. My wife. My boss. The two people I trusted more than anyone in the world had been scheming behind my back for months, maybe longer. I should have been furious. I should have been tearing the place apart, screaming, punching walls, anything to release the rage boiling inside me. But instead, I felt nothing. Just numbness. How could I have been so blind? It wasn't just the betrayal that cut so deep, it was the way they'd acted. The coldness in Amanda's eyes, the way she smiled like she was the one in control, like I had walked straight into their trap. But why? Why had they gone to such lengths to hide this from me? It felt like something darker was lurking just beneath the surface. I didn't sleep that night. My mind wouldn't stop spinning, replaying that scene in the hotel room over and over again. Something about Amanda's words, "This isn't over," gnawed at me. The calm, confident way she said it made my skin crawl. There was more going on here, something I hadn't pieced together yet. The next morning, that feeling hadn't gone away. As devastating as Laura's betrayal was, there was something deeper, something more sinister at play. The texts I'd seen between her and Amanda weren't just about their affair. They were hiding something bigger. I opened Laura's laptop, my hands trembling as I sifted through her files. I needed answers, something that would explain how long this had been going on, why it happened, and what else they'd been up to. It didn't take long to find it, an email thread buried deep in her inbox, hidden among her work messages. At first, I thought it was just another conversation between her and Amanda, more lies, more deceit. But then I saw the subject line, insurance policy details. My stomach dropped. I clicked on the email, my heart racing as I read through the exchange. Amanda, I spoke with the lawyer. Everything's in place. We just need to finalize the paperwork on Nick's policy. Laura, when can we meet to go over everything? We need to move fast. I scrolled down, my breath catching in my throat when I saw the attachment, a copy of my life insurance policy. They had been reviewing it, combing through the details, making plans. But plans for what? My hands shook as I opened the attachment, my mind spinning with 1,000 horrible possibilities. Why were they so concerned with my life insurance policy? What were they plotting? I skimmed through the document, my eyes scanning the clauses, the payout details, the fine print. And then I saw it, the clause about the payout in case of accidental death. That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. They weren't just sneaking around behind my back. They were planning to kill me. I felt like I was going to be sick. My stomach twisted in knots, bile rising in my throat as the full weight of what I had uncovered crashed over me. They had been planning to stage my death, to make it look like an accident, so they could collect the life insurance money and run away together. That's why they had been so cautious. That's why Amanda had smiled at me like I was just a piece in their twisted game, because that's exactly what I was. They had been playing me from the very start, both of them. My mind raced with memories, all those little moments that now made perfect sense in light of their plan. The carefully worded texts. The secretive meetings. The way Laura had been so distant. It was all part of their twisted plot to get rid of me and run off with the money. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the laptop screen in shock. It felt like my entire world had been blown apart, and I was standing there, trying to pick up the pieces. They were actually going to kill me. The buzzing of my phone snapped me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Laura. Laura, can we talk? I know you're upset, but there's so much you don't understand. My blood boiled as I read the words, my grip on the phone so tight I thought I might crush it. There's so much I don't understand. I had just uncovered their plan to kill me, and now she wanted to talk. My hands shook with rage as I typed out my response. I know everything. Stay away from me. I hit send and flung the phone across the room, my heart pounding like a drum. I couldn't believe this was real. The woman I had loved, the one I had trusted with my whole heart, had been plotting to murder me. I had to act fast. I didn't know how far along they were with their plan, but I wasn't about to wait and find out. I grabbed the laptop, my hands trembling, and took screenshots of every incriminating email I could find, each piece of evidence that might save my life. I forwarded them all to my personal account, making sure I had proof, something solid to take to the police if it came down to that. Once I had everything backed up, I sat there, trying to think through my next steps. I couldn't stay here, not with Laura knowing I was onto them. I had to get out. But where could I go? How could I stay safe? This wasn't just some affair, this was life or death. I didn't even hear the door creak open behind me. I spun around, my heart racing, and saw Laura standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she looked desperate, like she'd been searching for me all night. "Nick, please," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk. It's not what you think. Not what I think." I snapped, my voice seething with anger. "I know everything, Laura. I know about you and Amanda. I know about the life insurance. I know about your plan to kill me." Her face went white, and her breath hitched in her throat. "Nick, it wasn't like that. We weren't. Don't lie to me." I shouted, taking a step toward her. "I've seen the emails. I know what you were planning. You and Amanda were going to kill me. You were going to make it look like an accident so you could take the money and disappear." She sobbed, shaking her head. "I didn't want to do it. I swear. It was all Amanda's idea. She said it was the only way." I glared at her, my chest rising and falling with anger. "The only way? The only way to do what, Laura? Get rid of me?" She stood there, sobbing uncontrollably, her whole body trembling. I couldn't stand to look at her any longer. I turned away, my mind spinning as I tried to figure out what to do next. I needed to get out of there. I needed to protect myself before they made their next move. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice cold and final. "Don't follow me. Don't call me. If you do, I'll take everything to the police." "Nick, please," she cried, stepping toward me. "I love you. I didn't want any of this. It was all Amanda. I don't care." I interrupted, my voice shaking with fury. "You've already destroyed everything. There's nothing left to say." I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house, Laura's desperate sobs echoing behind me as I walked away from the life we had built together, the life that had turned into a living nightmare. I drove aimlessly, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Laura's sobs still echoed in my mind, her desperate, broken voice begging me to stay, to listen, to forgive her. But I couldn't. Not after everything I had uncovered. For weeks, maybe even months, I had slowly unraveled her web of lies, piece by piece. But this? This was beyond anything I could have imagined. The woman I had loved for 8 years had been planning to kill me. Laura and Amanda had conspired to stage my death and collect the life insurance money. They had been playing me from the very beginning. But I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I pulled off to the side of the road, my mind spinning as I tried to figure out what to do next. The anger inside me was burning hotter than I had ever felt before. They had plotted to take my life, to steal everything from me, but now it was my turn to take everything from them. I knew I had the power to ruin both of them, Laura and Amanda. I had the emails, the proof of their conspiracy, all the evidence that could put them behind bars. I could go to the police, lay out everything, and let the justice system do the rest. But that felt too easy. Too clean. They deserved so much more. I sat there, staring down at my phone, the screenshots of their emails staring back at me. It would only take a single tap, one call to the authorities, or one forwarded message to their bosses, and it would all be over for them. But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel the same crushing betrayal and fear that I had been drowning in. They had tried to take everything from me, my life, my money, my future. Now, I was going to take everything from them. The first step was simple: expose them. I started with Amanda, my boss, the woman who had been controlling my career and manipulating my life, all while plotting my death behind my back. She was going to fall first. I scrolled through my contacts and found the email address of her boss, the CEO of the company. I knew exactly what to send: the incriminating emails between her and Laura, the ones that spelled out their sick plan to kill me and disappear with the insurance money. I attached the emails and wrote a brief message at the top. You need to know what your VP has been up to. And then I hit send. I could already picture Amanda's face when she got the call: her career, her reputation, everything she had worked for, gone in an instant. There was no way out for her now, no way to talk her way out of this disaster. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. Next, I opened my social media accounts and uploaded the emails to my personal profile, making sure to tag Laura in the post. I wanted everyone, our friends, our family, the entire world, to see the truth. This is what happens when you trust the wrong people. I hit post, and with one click, everything was out in the open. Laura's betrayal was no longer hidden. She had spent months, maybe years, covering up her affair, hiding her conspiracy with Amanda. But now, she would be known for what she really was: a liar and a monster. The notifications started pouring in almost immediately. Friends, family, co-workers, everyone was texting, calling, asking what had happened. I ignored them all, my mind laser-focused on one thing: revenge. Laura's reputation was about to be torn to shreds. The woman who had once been admired for her charm, her elegance, and her picture-perfect life was about to become a pariah. And it wasn't just her personal life I was targeting. I still had access to our shared accounts. I knew where she had been stashing away money, hiding assets for her grand escape. I logged in, my hands steady as I began transferring every penny, all of it. In just a few minutes, every last dollar she had set aside for her new life with Amanda was gone. I couldn't help but smirk as I closed the laptop. Let them start from nothing. Let them feel what it's like to have everything ripped out from under them. But I wasn't done yet. There was one final move to make: the police. The evidence I'd gathered wasn't just enough to ruin their lives and reputations, it was enough to get them both arrested. The emails, the life insurance documents, the proof of their plan to stage my death, it was all enough to ensure they faced serious legal consequences. For a brief moment, I hesitated. My finger hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to leave them to rot in the mess I'd already created, to let them deal with the shame and humiliation of being exposed to everyone they knew. But then I thought about the fear I'd lived in for weeks, wondering if I'd survive whatever they had planned next. No, they deserved worse. They had been ready to kill me for money. They deserved to lose everything, just like they had tried to take everything from me. I dialed the number, my breathing steady as I listened to the line ring. When the operator answered, I laid it all out, the names, the evidence, the emails, the life insurance policy. I have proof of a conspiracy to commit murder, I said, my voice calm, and I need to speak with an investigator immediately. The next few hours were a whirlwind of calls, emails, and meetings. The police took my statement, gathered the evidence, and assured me that an investigation would begin right away. They didn't say much, but the looks on their faces told me this was serious. This wasn't just infidelity, this was attempted murder. As I drove home that night, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. Laura and Amanda had thought they could outsmart me. They had believed they could manipulate me, lie to me, and then discard me when I was no longer useful. But they had underestimated me. I didn't see the news until the following morning. Laura and Amanda had been arrested, charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Their mugshots were plastered all over the local news, their names dragged through the mud as every dirty detail of their plan was laid bare for the world to see. I sat on the couch, watching the news coverage in silence. Part of me felt satisfied, justice had been served. But another part of me felt empty. I had won. I had destroyed them. But the cost was steep. My marriage. My career. My ability to trust. All of it was gone, obliterated by their greed and betrayal. But at least I was still alive. And for now, that was enough.